Re-Zero, Side Story, Otto's Peddling Record of Joy and Sorrow, Chapter 1.
Laddie, don't you feel like it's way too noisy? Oh, is it? When he heard that familiar voice slide into his eardrum, the young man that was in the cargo wagon tilted his head. He was a delicate, grey-haired man. He gave off a slight aura of passivity, yet his countenance was excellently kempt, and his attire was carefully selected, preventing him from giving other people a negative impression. Rather than being liked, not being disliked was what he put more emphasis on. A device with the purpose to avoid provoking anybody's sensitivity in a bad way, that was how the youth saw his attire. However, his desire to not stand out was not due to the need of sheltering himself from the world. The traveling merchant did all this for the sake of trading the job that had become his livelihood, and wherein the impressions others had of him mattered. The youth's name was ottosuwen. Somebody like him, who acted as an independent merchant as he traveled across every land, accompanied solely by his beloved dragon, was what one would call a wandering dreamer. And now, Otto was in the middle of securing his freight inside the wagon of his dragon carriage. He would transport his procured goods to another land, where he would make a profit by exchanging them for money or other goods. That was the simple way peddling worked, and Otto's business was no exception to this rule. Otto stopping by this city in the mountains this time, too, had been with the purpose of promoting the alcohol and other luxury items he had most recently procured. Now, with his business having ended peacefully and his sales having been a huge success, all he could find the will to do was departing. But, even so, laddie, aren't you acting terribly absent-minded? Your transactions seem to have gone well in the end, but not even the hay is of good quality. You are pretending to worry about me so that I get you delicious herb? You have become quite glib. I won't pretend I don't have any hidden motives, laddie, but it's also true that I'm worried about you, you know? Though, of course, there's nothing better than some good hay. Yes, I get it. Still, that seems to be caused by the crop failure that has been happening lately, so the toasts and luxurious banquets will have to wait for when we are back at the bigger city. And that's the reason why you're so anxious to depart? Suspicious, huh? The voice that spoke to Otto doubted his answer. Since they had been together for a long time, she was able to perceive trivial anomalies in him, which made her a reliable, but on the other hand problematic, partner. In an attempt to not let her notice his internal impatience, Otto raised his voice deliberately. There is nothing wrong, really. Anyway, business here is over. Time is money, like the Hoshin proverb. Mr. Merchant. Are you there, Mr. Traveling Merchant? Otto's pretext was effortlessly eclipsed by the resounding, throaty voice of a man, in both terms of volume and terms of intention, effortlessly. Laddie, that, I know, you do not have to say it, frou-frou. With despondency added into his voice, Otto covered his face with his hands as he squatted. If only he could get overlooked by staying huddled here. Without that fleeting hope coming true. Ooh. I have found you, Mr. Traveling Merchant. This is good news. A sign of hope. Tearing off the wagon's cover, the other man peeked inside, found Otto, and broke into a smile. The latter did not even get the energy to put into words how wrong it was to peek into someone else's dragon carriage without permission. Otto breathed out a sigh of resignation as he stood up reluctantly. Ah, if I remember correctly, you are Colin Lavrel. I am the representative of Guinea. In contrast with Otto's apathy, the man who introduced himself as Colin was quite intense. Judging by his hair that was becoming thin, and his tidy moustache that had a white tint, his age was probably already around 60, and despite this, his brimming spirit was so healthy that his saliva reached Otto, who was in the deepest part of the wagon. Well, Colin-san, what is it that you want from a humble traveling merchant like me? That is it. To tell the truth, I have a very urgent consultation to make, which is why I was searching for a traveling merchant. As he wiped his face with a hand towel, Colin replied avidly to the question that Otto made timidly. However, the fact that he was searching for him had already reached Otto's ears a while ago. His voice could be heard from every part of the city anyway, though. Did you say something? No, nothing really. Could you have misheard? I see, mishearing. But if we interpret this as a divine omen, it turns out to be an excellent presage, indeed. Bringing it to a pretty forced positive conclusion, Colin clenched his fist with immense strength. Then he used his free hand to make a sign towards Otto, who was standing still. Well then. It would be of no use to talk in a place as cramped as this one. Let us go to my residence instead. There is an important matter I need to discuss with you there, Mr. Traveling Merchant. The option to refuse seemed to no longer exist for Otto. Also, he wanted to avoid having his favorite dragon carriage dirtied by Colin's saliva during the interrogation. Because, no matter who made fun of it for being cramped, to Otto, it was still the important dragon carriage which he had been moving with for many years. My condolences, laddie. When he was about to follow after the jubilant Colin, his partner spoke those words to him. The pity in that voice being genuine, Otto sighed deeply. And this is why I wanted to depart quickly. Doing it a few seconds earlier would have changed nothing. The problem is that you've got pretty bad timing, laddie. Without even complaining, Otto raised both hands in resignation. Mr. Traveling Merchant, may I ask who were you talking to? Suddenly, Colin, who had stopped walking, thoroughly surveyed his surroundings with his eyes, and tilted his head. In his eyes, Otto did not seem to be talking to anybody. And his understanding was not actually incorrect, because, in Otto's surroundings, there was no human to whom one could talk. Unfortunately, Otto had no reason to explain the details behind that. So, no, Otto shrugged his shoulders in response to Colin's doubt. I was not talking to anyone. Could it be that you have misheard again? Humph, so I keep mishearing things. These omens of good luck are non-stop. I can feel hope surging as if from a fountain. Everything looks so promising, Mr. Traveling Merchant. Otto thought of prolonged mishearing not as a good omen, but as a sign of an illness or something of the like, but, without particularly getting into the topic, it seems so. Otto adorned his tired face with a vague smile. Good grief, only the light blue-skinned land dragon observed Otto's insincere smile as if lamenting it.
Chapter 2.
Gineb was a city located in an inconspicuous area, hidden within the mountains of the southern lands of the Kingdom of Lagunica. It was said that, originally, it was close to a mine from which magic minerals were extracted, and its urban development was caused by the workers who operated there and their families building their homes. And after that, people had started gathering in that small, which had gradually evolved into the city that it was now. However, by the time the city was done developing, the essential veins were already exhausted. My grandfather moved here hoping that it would become the second Costule, but it seems he ended up disappointed. The mining city Costule, right? The everlasting ores there account for a huge part of the kingdom's magic stone industry. As one would expect from the city that is rumored to have been the dragon's nest. Ooh. I see that you are knowledgeable. Just like any man who survives through business ought to be. Sitting in front of him was Colin, hurling eulogies at him one by one with his loud voice and saliva. Otto, sitting on the reception sofa, was in the process of dodging both the chatter and his saliva with an insincere smile. The place where he had been brought to after having his departure interrupted was the best mansion in the city, although its scale was nothing compared to an actual mansion like the ones found in the capital. It was certainly the best residence in Gineb. It seemed like Colin had not lied when calling himself the city's representative. Normally, Otto would have been pretty welcoming of a chance to become close to an influential person in that land, but in this one case, the circumstances were a little different. Therefore, now that he had had enough participation in his small talk, Otto raised his eyebrows and broached the main subject. I think that is enough, Colin-san. What is that business you have called me for? As you know, I am a traveling merchant. I am the sort of person who hates, more than anything, to stay in one place for too long without earning a single coin. My negotiations in Gineb are already over. If possible, I would like to cross the mountains as soon as I can, so. That is it. When he was already choosing his words at great speed in a desperate attempt to flee from the scene, Otto shut his mouth. Because Colin interrupted his pretext, and the palm of the man's hand was shoved in front of his face. When Otto fell silent at his rudeness, that is it, Colin repeated. The consultation I wish to make, Mr. Traveling Merchant, is precisely about mountain crossing. Finally, thought Otto as he tried to keep Colin from discerning the tension in his own mind. Mountain crossing that was, as of now, an inevitable part of the path that one needed to take to arrive in Guinea. To travel back and forth to Guinea, which was within the mountains, one had to use the passage that stretched out from the mountain's base. And on the way there, it was also necessary to cross through the bridge above the river that was on the valley floor, but the condition said bridge was currently in made its utilization impossible. And that meant, I guess that you are already aware, Mr. Traveling Merchant, but the latest spell of rain has made the river on the valley floor overflow. Thanks to that, the bridge towards the mountain's foot drifted away, leaving no method to arrive in the city other than crossing the intricate mountain road. Like Colin said, the bridge above the river had drifted away, leaving Guinea in the state of a solitary island. Still, it was not completely isolated from the outside world either. If one gave up on crossing the river and used the harsh, twisted mountain road, it was possible to travel from the mountain's base to the city and vice versa. However, there was no doubt that it would take way more time than crossing the bridge, and that the path was too dangerous. Not many would go to such extents just to attempt to do business at Guinea, where there were no particularly impressive profits to be made. Having developed within the mountains, Guinea had a certain degree of self-sustainability. Traveling merchants not visiting for a few months would be no matter of life or death. For that reason, it could be concluded that traveling merchants would not be appearing in the city for a while. And that is where Otto had come in. I thought that I would be forced to endure this until the bridge was fixed, but you, Mr. Traveling Merchant, have come with truly perfect timing. You see, although we are completely fine with what we have here, to get luxury items we have no choice other than to request them. This is pretty good luck for both of us, then. Thanks to that, I can feel my pockets full after a long time, so, it sure is. However, Mr. Traveling Merchant, you are a special case. The bridge fell a few days ago, and you were already at Guinea when it happened, which means you took that troublesome mountain road before the bridge fell. Such a meaningless detour for a traveling merchant who hates to waste his own time. Or could it be that you indeed know it, Mr. Traveling Merchant? The mountain crossing method to arrive in Guinea. Regardless of how precipitous the mountain road is. And without any magic to cross the now bridgeless river, with Colin leaning towards him and looking at him with bloodshot eyes as he let his saliva fly, Otto gave a sigh of grief. Although his behavior lacked grace, Colin's inference was, for the most part, correct. In fact, Otto had decided to trade at Guinea after finding out the bridge had fallen. He had assumed that, in the situation Guinea was right now, the demand for luxury items would be high, and so he had gathered them up with great haste, and unless Otto had broken through the river that had overflowed because of the rain, then he could not have wasted several days crossing through the precipitous mountain road on foot. His most recent negotiations had been led to success by some method impossible for everybody but Otto. That method is a business secret of mine. Sorry, I cannot reveal it. If this strength is meaningful, it is because only I know it. If I were to disclose it, understandable. Very understandable. But there is a certain circumstance which makes me need it desperately. Circumstance? Otto's eyes widened, and Colin nodded several times with great intensity. Then he turned back to look at the parlor's entrance, and spoke, "Come," in an unnecessarily loud voice. After that, the door opened, and a man with a pale and slender face timidly made his appearance. His age seemed to be around 5 years older than Otto. The man, characterized by a mole next to his nose, gave off an impression of faint-heartedness. Then he greeted Otto with a hello, barely taking his eyes off the floor. "This is my son, Ahim. The matter we were discussing is related to him. Hey! Use that mouth of yours and talk to Mr. Traveling Merchant. You are." Grabbing his son by the shoulders, Colin firmly made him sit next to himself. Shrunk in fear of his father's vigor, Ahim kept alternately looking at Otto and averting his gaze. An unnecessarily passionate father, and a son who lacked even the necessary energy, the two were each other's exact opposite. "So, Ahim-san, I have been told that you have something. A consultation for me, so you see. At the mountain, Morone is. So, I have a daughter named Morone. Well, actually, She is my son's fiancée. In the end, as Colin could stand this no longer, he began the explanation in Ahim's stead. Since this also brought visible relief to his son's mind, Otto quietly lent an ear to the father's explanation. The explanation included some derailments, but once it was concisely summarized, Ahim-san's fiancée, Miss Morone, was kidnapped by the ruffians settled in the mountain. And you wanted to give aid in order to bring her back, that is right. Of course. Because we could not afford to rely on outsiders, I made an appeal in the city to see if any brave hero volunteered to help with the rescue. But the only result is that now I know that this place is full of cowards. How deplorable. Cowards, you say. Those men took a youthful damsel away. Back when I was young, such a crime would have never been forgiven. We would have gathered the citizens and torn those ruffians to pieces. In response to Otto's summary, Colin's face reddened as he called the citizens cowards with disdain. He felt like the biggest one out of those cowards was the one shrinking next to Colin, but Otto sympathized with his wish to not blame the frightened Ahim or the citizens. Stories of broke people who took weapons and degraded themselves to become bandits were quite common, and between people who chose to steal to survive and people who had a home and a job, the readiness to wield a sword was extremely different. Cowardice, too, was a quality necessary to live. Otto did not think that it was shameful to lead a modest life. Therefore, he sympathized more with all those people Colin labeled as cowards. Even so, Otto put his hand on his chin and brooded over the misfortune that the ruffians had brought into Guinea. Of course, it was indeed an unlucky incident, but Guinea's contact with the outside world had always been pretty limited, which would make it a perfect hunting ground for bandits. The fact that problems like this one had not arisen until now felt rather miraculous. Consequently, it would be indispensable to establish countermeasures to deal with these situations in the future. Mr. Traveling Merchant. Are you listening, eh? Oh, yes, pardon me. I was just thinking about something. Otto had no obligation to trouble himself with the defense of a city he did not even live in, but whenever he saw a hole so conspicuous, he could not help but feel the urge to cover it. He thought of that as his own way to remind himself that, in life, self-preservation was of crucial importance. Anyway, this is a huge emergence. Miss Morone was kidnapped 2 nights ago. If she does not get help as soon as possible, her life will be in danger. And that is where you appeared, Mr. Traveling Merchant, with some unknown method to cross the mountains. If that is not fate, then I do not know what it is. A simple coincidence. If it is not fate, then what is it? His insistence was strong. His face was annoying. Otto shut his mouth at Colin's force. Still, leaving aside his animosity towards the coercive Colin, he was genuinely worried about the safety of the woman that had been kidnapped by the ruffians. Otto was not insensitive enough to use self-preservation as an excuse to ignore the suffering of a helpless woman. Colin's plan to form a rescue team was definitely more humane than giving up and leaving her to her own devices. So, what do you say, Mr. Traveling Merchant? As Otto oscillated between his sensibility as a person and his instinct as a merchant, that question was thrown at him. However, from the moment he had been called to this mansion, he did not have any choice left as Otto. If he rejected Colin's proposal, Otto would be remembered as the one who forsook the fiancé of the city representative's son, and he would not be able to do business normally in Guinea ever again. But if he agreed to Colin's proposal and disclosed everything, he would forsake the advantage that only he had, and that would be a huge loss too. Therefore, there was only one choice that Otto could make here. The method I used to come here, I cannot tell you that. Ho! Mr. Traveling Merchant, will you forsake my innocent daughter? But listen to this. When Colin's expression turned grim, Otto shoved his hand towards the man's face as if getting his revenge, thoroughly interrupting his noisy voice. When he saw Colin's surprise, he donned a small smile in an attempt to not give off that impression. I will personally send the rescue appeal to the outside. Meanwhile, the citizens will begin the bridge's repair as soon as possible. And just like that, he corrected the proposal, in order to end up not with huge losses, but with minimum losses.
Chapter 3.
Laddie. Come on, you know the one who got manipulated back there was you. Excuse me? I would say it was the best choice I could make if I wanted to keep the damage at the minimum. Even I am aware of how excessive this new baggage I have taken is, you see. Sat on the driver's seat as he held the reins, Otto protested, with visible annoyance on his lips, towards his partner. But to his proposal, yeah, sure, his partner gave an exasperated answer, sounding as if she was already used to this. Moo. As much as he attempted to look displeased, deep down Otto acknowledged that his partner was right. Honestly, it was indeed true that he had been thoroughly manipulated. Both as a merchant and in the humanitarian aspect, Otto had been fully duped by Colin. It was that simple. I knew it. I should have pretended to not hear anything and departed at once. And thanks to that miscalculation, I got into this trouble. But there is a woman in danger, so, well, now that you know that, you can't just pretend you don't see it. Laddie, there's no way you can be a bad person. Well, you see. Even I have an order for what is important to me. And if someone tries to alter that, I will respond. You are also one of those things after all, Frou-Frou. Yeah, thank you very much. When he heard her apathetic reply, Mayu. He complained once again, but the only thing that his partner did was chuckle. Right now, just as Colin had requested, Otto was heading towards the closest city to Guinea. He could collaborate to save a woman, but he could not disclose the information that he had. That was the conclusion, or rather, desperate measure, that the afflicted Otto had reached at the interstice between his human self and merchant self. Of course, his collaboration was not entirely out of goodwill either. It turned out that he had made the Lavrel family promise, in written form, that he would receive preferential treatment whenever he came to do business in Guinea in the future. So, if one looked at the solid facts, he had closed a deal that, on top of helping somebody else, would also be lucrative for his business. Him still feeling defeated despite all this was probably due to his own lack of generosity. May, I don't think it's that, I think it's just that they've got you tied by the neck. Otto's partner read his mind, making Otto breathe out a sigh. Behind him, inside the moving carriage's wagon, there was a silhouette that did not belong to his cargo. It was a man cowering and holding his own knees, the one who had had his fiancée stolen, the poor Ahim. When making the deal with Otto, the one thing Colin had not allowed Otto to reject was this man's company during the journey. From the moment your fiancé gets stolen, you're already a failure as the Lavrel heir. And if it turned out that, on top of that, you just sat the whole time watching my daughter get rescued, there'll be no way to get your sunken honor back. That was what Colin had stated as he pushed his son from behind. It was not like he thought that it was not reasonable, but Otto was the one in charge of supervising Ahim during his redemption journey. Despite his strong opposition, in the end, the pressure had left him with no choice other than accepting Ahim's company. Thanks to that, the ambience in the dragon carriage was drearier than ever. Ahim had seldom opened his mouth ever since the journey's beginning. Considering the divine protection of windbreak was active in the carriage, it was most likely not a matter of physical comfort, but of feelings. I see that when family matters and woman problems get mixed, the only result is literally always going to be a disaster. Now that's quite deep when you say it, laddie. I wonder, laddie, is that girl still anxious for you to return to your hometown so she can burn you at the stake? Just the thought of it makes me feel depressed, so I would rather not think about it. When he heard her speak of the problem he had left behind in his hometown, Otto grimaced and shook his head sideways. He was a traveling merchant, obviously, but it was for a different reason that, years ago, he had become unable to go back to the city where his old home was. If he went back, he would cause trouble for his family. And his own life would be at risk too. Such absurd circumstances, seriously. But I'm used to it. It's horrible to get used to these things, isn't it? Who are you talking to? When that voice suddenly reached him, Otto's shoulders rose, and he turned back. He did and saw Ahim leaning from the wagon into the driver's seat, even though he was holding his own knees a while ago. I heard you talking, but there's no here. And, I found that creepy. Ahim restlessly looked around, puzzlement showing on his face after confirming that there was no one there indeed. Yes, to tell the truth, I have a habit of mumbling quite large monologues. Is that so? You see, when you are a traveling merchant, a big part of life is traveling alone with nobody to have a conversation with. I guess it is just natural for a lot of us to get the habit of talking to the air, like me, that's pitiful. Good thing I'm not a merchant or anything. His words of compassion made Otto feel the strong blood link between Ahim and Colin. A father and son whose attitudes and behaviors were as different as their natures were similar. What is the matter, though? We are still pretty far from the city. I need to pee. Can't we stop over there for a moment? I see. That is certainly a problem. When it came to bodily functions, it was reasonable even for Ahim to muster his almost nil courage. Being soiled by the father's saliva and then also being wet by the son would be way too miserable for both the carriage and Otto. Pulling the reins immediately, Otto parked the carriage at an edge of the mountain road. He saw Ahim descend from the carriage, after saying his thanks, and then head towards a thicket that was away from their path. That's something he should have taken care of before departure. He is not used to traveling. Just let him off, please. Showing his exasperated partner a bitter smile, Otto quietly waited for Ahim to come back from that. They still had a long way to go, and it made him heavy-hearted to think that this silent journey would continue for a long while. But, hey. Come here for a bit, Interrupting Otto as he was deep in thought, Ahim called. Wondering what was wrong, Otto looked around the forest, from the driver's seat, with strained eyes, but he could not detect Ahim's silhouette. Ahim-san? What happened? See, come here. A bug I've never seen before. Bit me in a weird place. What do you mean, a weird place? Please give me a break. When that distasteful sentence reached his ears, Otto jumped off the driver's seat as he scratched his head. He pushed through the thicket and advanced into its depths, and there, in a location completely separated from the carriage, he could see Ahim's back. Wondering why anyone would choose a place like that to pee, Otto dropped his shoulders. Getting bit by insects was nothing uncommon when traveling, but getting bit in weird places was, by itself, a huge problem. Ahim-san, the place where it bit you. Never mind, you do not have to show me. It can become quite serious if it swells, though, so the sooner you tell me. It was possible to treat, for now, with the medicine that was packed in the carriage. That was what he tried to tell him. The next instant, Otto's sight got greatly blurry when he received that impact. Right after he felt what he thought was grass under his feet, the back of his head was hit by a hard, heavy object. He let a cry escape and tried to stay firm, but it was of no use. Shook and unable to support the weight of his head, his body tottered. Without even getting the chance to take a defensive stance, he plummeted to the ground. He hit his face. The pain. The taste of dirt inside his mouth. His consciousness faded away. While it faded, Otto thought vaguely, I sure hope the place where I fell isn't near to where Ahim peed.
Chapter 4.
You're awake, Yue? With his face rubbing against cold fabric, Otto made an inane sound and opened his eyes. His sight was blurry. After blinking several times, his eyes' focus gradually lined up with the world, finally allowing Otto to see the person who was in front of him, looking at his face, a red-haired woman, a woman with bright red hair tied behind her head. Her eyes had an intense brilliance to them, and her pretty face gave off an air of tenacity, but her beauty was clouded by the faint signs of fatigue and the dirtiness of her clothes. Where? Be quiet. I don't want those guys up there to notice. The first thing that came out of his thirsty mouth was a hoarse voice. In response to that sound, the woman put a finger to her lips, and then pulled a water bucket, which was right beside her, towards her. She proceeded to take some water out with her hands and let it dampen Otto's lips as he panted. Thanks to the liquid, which tasted like he was literally absorbing the woman's kindness, Otto slowly came to his senses. Thank you, very much. You are slave number 1. Or captive princess number 1. You're number 2. Choose whichever you want. Even while they were having such a trivial exchange, it was obvious just how desperate their situation was. Hearing Otto reply like that despite said situation made the woman's lips break into a small smile. I wasn't expecting a guy with a face like yours to be that tough. I'm Morone. Allow me to welcome you, my esteemed junior slave. Such a welcome is not very pleasant to hear upon entrance, senior. Wait, Did you just say you are Morone-san? Yeah, that's what I just said. In front of the puzzled woman, Morone, Otto tried to hold his own head. But sadly, his right arm, which was inconveniently linked to the wall, did not allow him to do so. Otto turned to look at his right arm, only to find it linked to the wall by a chain, its freedom stolen. This is bad, is it? Don't you think it's better than a collar? After a long time of complaining I got them to treat me better. I'm not sure if this is actually a treatment improvement, or a mere stopgap to distract you, miss. I mean, you're Morone-san, and I'm in this situation, so, the fact that his brain worked so ordinarily in a moment like this made him feel bitter. Inside Otto's mind, the story he had heard from Colin at Guinea and his current situation connected instantly. Morone being captive, and Otto becoming captive after getting beaten. A situation in which he was anchored to the wall and was called slave number 2 or junior slave. This was, unmistakably, the ruffian's hideout, now that I look at it in this new perspective. Yes, it's a horrible scene. After he observed his surroundings with strained eyes, there was a sudden drop in Otto's mood. And that was to be expected, for the place where they were being kept was a prison furnished with metal bars and stone walls, dirty fabric, fragments of fine porcelain, and other things of the like were scattered on the cold stone floor. Although a passage stretched out from the other side of the bars, the faded lighting made its end invisible. Still, judging from how cold the air was, he felt like they were trapped in some place below the ground, like a cave or something similar. Could it be a passage made to facilitate mining at a now disused mine? Wow, you're smart. So you're just an unlucky guy who got involved with them by pure chance? No idea. I really cannot deny that unlucky bit, though. Feeling his cheeks stiffen at Morone's question, Otto confirmed that there were no human silhouettes in the prison, except for her and himself. For reasons of space, it was hard to imagine that there was another prison nearby, but, excuse me, was I the only one brought here? Or did I come with someone else? It was only you, yeah. Did you come with a friend? Well, we were not close enough for me to call him a friend, but he was not someone I would feel good abandoning, either. He was a spindly man, taller and older than me. Spindly, older. Any other characteristic? While Morone pondered, oh, yes, Otto put his free left hand on his chin. Now that I think of it, he had a big mole next to the nose. Also, he looked unhealthy, and that is all Okay, that's enough. That's enough, really, So that coward came to drop someone who didn't even know a thing about all this, didn't he? Ho! Morone's reddened, angry face and loud bellow made Otto widen his eyes in shock. Otto was witnessing such insanity from the same person who, a while ago, had told him to stay silent. Otto's consequent surprise was considerably big too, so their voices ended up producing a colossal echo in the passage. Hey, don't you think your impulsivity could have caused us a lot of trouble? Ha. Sorry. I should learn to manage my anger. I'm still a novice at this senior slave thing, okay? I am sure your aptitude as a slave is not the problem. Wait, what the? Morone apologized for her blunder with her eyes cast downward, and Otto tried to inquire about the meaning of her words. However, he was interrupted by the sound of multiple footsteps that came close, which belonged to the men of vulgar appearance who appeared on the other side of the prison. Coarse smiles showed on their faces as they clapped when they saw Otto awake. So you're finally awake, Lil Slave number 2. That nickname was not some prank by Morone-san, it's the tradition or something, you see. Though it'd be great if it could just quickly rot and go extinct along with these scums. That's our number 1, as full of life as always. As they whistled, the men laughed Morone's invective off. They were a group of bandits, every single one of them having a slovenly appearance and an unrefined attitude, so simple that they could very well be characters from a picture book. There was no doubt that they were the bandits he had heard about in Guinea. A disused tunnel getting made into their hideout was, considering the way the city of Guinea had developed, very ironic. If we ignore the lack of sunlight, living here might not actually be that bad, right? You heard that? It's a good thing number 2 doesn't know when to shut up. 'Cause it's too hard to get any information out of them when they're tight-lipped. And those guys ain't even fun to torture. What happened to my land dragon and my carriage? I think they were parked nearby. Paying no attention to the bandits' mockery, Otto voiced what was currently his biggest concern. It would have been absurd for them not to notice that Otto's dragon carriage was parked near the mountain road. Of course, he would also expect his carriage and cargo to be seized. He did not think they had any reason to kill a land dragon that was docile towards people, though. Relax. Your business tools, your fortune, everything's safe with us. As for your land dragon, it looks like she doesn't love you anymore now that you're a slave. She turned her back on you just like that, and now she's working for us. I've always wanted a dragon helper, so it's all perfect. Is that so? That's what matters. He bit his lip in frustration as he cast his eyes downward, and the men laughed, making fun of his bad loser attitude. On the receiving end of that, Otto masked the strong ache in his chest. The situation had already gotten pretty bad by now, but there was still something that he needed to verify. So he asked, "What happened to the man I was with?" "Oh, I refuse to believe you were so absorbed in me and my carriage you did not notice him." He wanted to confirm Ahim's safety, since he was not here. However, Otto was having very pessimistic thoughts about this. He could not be seen inside the prison. If he had been caught alive, he should have been here, regardless of whether he would be treated as a slave or not. And yet, he was not, but the men looked at each other and, with incredible ease, disproved Otto's worst guess. That dude. The man you were with. If you're talking about him, we just let him go. By this time he's probably back at the city as if nothing happened, and getting comforted by his noisy father. You let him go? Yeah, since he gave us a present. He was so scared. Even we can be merciful sometimes, you know. Ain't that right, guys? In response to the man's dramatic expression, the surrounding others cheered in approval, but Otto was not feeling it. The men had freed Ahim, that was what they said. They had simply freed a person who had seen their faces and knew of their crimes. What was the meaning of that? When he arrived at that conclusion, Otto was aghast. Ahim-san was your accomplice? Don't call him our accomplice. Be a little more elegant and call it a cooperative relationship, slave number 2. The affirmation that supported Otto's guess overlapped with a sublime burst of laughter coming from the men. He had accompanied him during the journey in the carriage, made him stop the carriage halfway, pretending he was going to pee, and then he had lured him into the thicket. Everything had been done for two purposes: sealing a hindrance's mouth and acquiring a new slave. That man had artfully manipulated him. His biggest miscalculation had been to think of Ahim as nothing more than a timid coward. Now he could not laugh at Colin anymore. Well, stay like that for a while. We think our time around here's already running out. For now, just enjoy everything your temporary slave lives have to offer until then. As if he could see the silent Otto's stupefaction, the man mocked him as he rang the metal bars. Enjoy what? Next time you get close, I'll bite your fingers or whatever into 1,000 pieces. Oh, number 1, you're so scary. I guess you're still hurt 'cause of that man ditching you. Leaving behind those frivolous words, the men left the two slaves behind as they moved away from their cell, until the sound of their footsteps became inaudible. Otto and Moroni said nothing. During that time, the passage's lighting faded, letting the faint darkness spread over the cold prison once again.
Chapter 5.
First of all, that man and I weren't engaged or anything. Oh, I see, what else? To the disproportionate disclosure of facts, Otto reacted weakly, with a pitiful expression and voice. A while after being mocked by the bandits, Otto had talked to Moroni inside the faint darkness, thus beginning a mutual information exchange with the purpose of getting to know their circumstances. Over the course of it, they had talked about the request Otto had received at Guinea, and they eventually brought up the topic of Ahim and Moroni's relationship, but the revelation she suddenly dropped was way too much for Otto to process. Just what was the truth and what was a lie, and how dark was the city of Guinea? So, is Colin-san conspiring with Ahim too? Are both father and son collaborating with the ruffians near the city and preying upon the residents? Hey, I don't think the situation is as hopeless as you put it. Colin-san may not realize he has a distasteful habit of never listening to others, but he's not one to get involved in twisted stuff. Well, He certainly did not seem to be a very good actor. That person, put in kind words, was not hypocritical, and put in harsh words, he was like a fair of malicious sincerity. Now that Moroni herself denied Colin's involvement, Otto wondered if Ahim's individual crime, which was actually not individual because he collaborated with the ruffians, was truly one. But, in that case, how do you explain the contradiction between Colin-san's statements and the facts? Well, this is gonna sound weird, but look, aren't I a beauty? I find it annoying when people praise themselves with such incredible frankness, but it is true. You are a beauty, so, what if Ahim thought having a beauty as his fiancée would help him avoid his father's mockery? Considering what kind of father-son relationship they have, it makes sense. No, that can't be. When he said that, Otto remembered what he had seen of their relationship and shut his mouth. Colin took every chance he had to steal his son's right to make decisions. Maybe that had become unbearable, even for somebody as submissive as Ahim. However, him sacrificing Otto and Moroni to keep his pretensions was probably something Colin wanted to avoid. You see, some days ago, Ahim took me to the forest saying he had something to tell me. I knew the bandits were in the mountain, and more than 2 girls had been kidnapped already, so I didn't want to. Hey, wait. Please wait. Information Otto could not afford to let slide came up, and thus, Moroni replied to Otto's interruption with a what? And a displeased face. Moroni-san, you were not the first one to be kidnapped by the bandits. Of course not. There were a lot more people. When I got here, I was slave number 2. Do you get what that means? The numbers have advanced. It was not hard to imagine what had happened to the previous number 1 and the rest. Once a young woman was caught by the ruffians, her fate was either to become a plaything or to be sold off as a slave. Don't worry. They haven't laid a single finger on me. I'm high quality, so they can sell me at an equally high price, they say. Also, it seems those guys have something to ask you. That's what I heard when they brought you here. They need your collaboration to cross the mountains safely, I think. Colin-san and Ahim were the only ones supposed to know about that, though. My condolences. Producing a loud sound with the chains that restrained her as she spoke, Moroni made Otto's bad luck reach the limit. Still, thanks to that, he was able to make out the whole situation. At first, he had found it suspicious. Despite the fact that it had everything that a scoundrel would feel attracted to, Gineb had, miraculously, never met with misfortune until now, and the reason was no miracle. It was just that, until now, everyone in the city had been closing their eyes to the outrage and pretending that everything was fine. But Colin-san actually took action this time. Could it be that the fact that his son's fiancée was kidnapped by the bandits made his patience give out? To begin with, it was that very same son who handed his fiancée over to the bandits, but whatever. Was he that scared of his father seeing through his pretensions or something? And now even you're pretty deep into this embroil, number 2. It is the same embroil you are in, Moroni-san. Everything had originated from the discord between a father and a son, the latter, who had a horde of immature grudges inside him, using the city's most beautiful woman as a convenient lie for the sake of his own pretensions. And then there was Otto, a poor victim of the circumstances. Is this seriously the pinnacle of my bad luck? Seeing Moroni in this embroil was pitiful too, but it would never be the same degree of pitiful that his own case was. When he thought he had found a sales plan that was perfect and exclusive for him, all of his earnings, including his dragon carriage, had been taken from him, and now the only thing awaiting him was a life crisis and a slave status. Hey, chill, no need to be so pessimistic. I'm sure there's good things in life too. Who knows, maybe we'll get lucky and someone'll come to help us. Help us, the unfortunate ones who ended up dragged into a problem caused by someone else's pretensions. Who would? A traveling knight that happens to pass by? A rather wonderful thought, yes, thought Otto, admiring the strength of Moroni's heart. Moroni, whose time in this prison had surely been way longer and more severe than Otto's, had not lost a single fragment of the spirit she had back when chains were not binding her. That was a virtue. A precious virtue that shone as brightly as a miracle in a city like Guinea. But I am a merchant. Pessimism, that was all he needed. In business there was neither absolute or relief. Therefore, Otto, pessimistic as he was, kept thinking about the worst of the worst one time after another. Somebody coming to help them, something so convenient was not going to happen. Because what a traveling merchant ought to trust was not fate, but the fortune that they held firmly in hand, and nothing more.
Chapter 6.
Still, we were also pretty damn lucky to have caught a protégé in the end. Before Otto, who was tied in the dragon carriage's wagon, one of the bandits spoke as he laughed loudly. The morning after that conversation at the prison, Otto had been loaded into his own carriage as cargo, and now he was being threatened by the men to guide them safely across the mountains. Even though he had only spent one day captive, the sunlight and air from the outside felt extremely yearned for. But he did not even have time to fully experience that pleasure. Satiated with their misdeeds in Guinea, the bandits planned to cross the mountains and move to their next hideout before Colin sent an advanced subjugation team out. For that purpose they were using Otto's carriage and land dragon, with him and Moroni being treated as booty. Hey, number 2. Can't you do something about this situation with your divine protection? Inside the wagon, Moroni asked in a low voice. From the bandits' perspective, their treatment of Moroni, who was the best article in their booty, was not bad. At least, it was 1,000 times better compared to Otto's, for he had been sloppily tied and thrown into the wagon. However, that was just another facet of their difference in luck. I guess it depends on the definition of something. Do you have any rough expectations? Borrowing Moroni's hand, Otto put his back against the wall as he tried everything he could to sit. When she heard Otto's words, "Let's see," Moroni pondered. The next instant, all the villains will be utterly smashed to bits. Something like that. What kind of things are you expecting from my divine protection? Don't get me wrong. I'm not expecting things from your divine protection, I'm expecting things from you, number 2, from someone whose name you don't even know? How? Otto raised his voice in response to Moroni's words. Moroni looked at him and donned a small smile, but that smile was ephemeral and their exchange was hollow. The hope Moroni put into words did not represent any serious expectation about Otto's divine protection either. She was simply resisting to keep the despair before her eyes from gnawing at her heart. Number 2, your divine protection is the divine protection of guidance, right? That's what you said, I think. Yes, that is right. Unfortunately, my divine protection is not powerful enough to smash my opponents to bits. The divine protection of guidance that was the trump card Otto had shown the bandits, a way to cross the mountains that was not using the fallen bridge nor the steep mountain road, since Ahim had told the bandits that Otto happened to know that, he would not be able to feign ignorance. Therefore, before they resorted to torture, Otto himself had decided to reveal that he was a protégé. Divine protections were blessings bestowed upon people at birth in general. They were the kind of superpowers one could call blessings. Having one of those rare powers that were bestowed upon one person in 1,000 was like having a special talent that nobody else had. Their effects functioned in a way different from how magic did, and a lot of them had effects that surpassed the limits of human understanding. The divine protection that Otto had exposed was also irrefutably an ability outside human understanding. It is quite difficult to use. This divine protection is not as omnipotent as its name might suggest, but it's thanks to that divine protection that you were able to go from the prison to the exit while blindfolded, isn't it? That's impressive. Whether his words were humility or self-deprecation, Moroni hurriedly advocated for Otto. Moroni was talking about the moment when Otto had demonstrated his divine protection in front of the bandits. Otto had to prove that his presence would be necessary for the bandits' escape when crossing the mountains. There, Otto had explained his divine protection, and, in order to demonstrate the effects of the divine protection of guidance, he had traversed an entire intricate tunnel, blindfolded all the way through. The shortcut we will take is not the mountain road you know, but I will let you be the judge of its effectiveness. Besides, now that they know you're a protégé, they aren't gonna kill you. They were rejoicing because protégés sell well. Actually, I'm so glad to have been born as a protégé is not what I would say. To begin with, if I did not have a divine protection, I would not have been caught in this. Although popular belief stated that divine protections were always convenient, there were a lot of hardships that only protégés understood. and the nature of those hardships could not be understood even by fellow protégés. The holder of a divine protection for hearing too much and the holder of a divine protection for seeing too much had very different tribulations. Therefore, Otto decided to dodge Morone's words with nothing more than a vague smile. She did not say that out of malice, and it was true that he was still alive thanks to his divine protection. If I did not have a divine protection, huh? You said something, number 2? No, just something trivial. Leaving that aside, may I ask for one thing? History had no records of a situation being solved by complaining. So Otto hid what he murmured earlier behind a bitter smile and asked a single favor of Morone. When she heard the petition, Morone's eyes widened, and she tried to ask about Otto's intentions, but, come on, time to go. Make way, slaves. We can't all fit in there if it's too cramped. As saliva flew, the bandits got into the wagon. In that instant, Otto and Morone were separated, and the wagon was dominated by the turbulent men's presence and stink. One of the bandits got onto the driver's seat, took the reins and ordered the land dragon to start running. The land dragon showed signs of hesitation for an instant, but soon the carriage started moving slowly. Well, you're in charge of guiding us, number 2. You're the only one we can rely on. And if you can't, number 1's gonna have a very bad time. Thrusting a knife towards Morone, he threatened him with a coarse smile and barbaric attitude. In response, Otto obeyed, using his divine protection to direct the carriage's course towards a shortcut. Good thing you're cooperative. Thanks to that we didn't have to go through any complicated process. Complicated process, you mean? I'm talking about some light torture. Pacifist meetings make my heart hurt, don't you see? The man beside him said casually as he brought a stained club to the palm of his hand. When he looked at it, the club's tip was tinted dark red, giving him a rough idea of what their pacifism was like. Anyway, head to the right from here, please. After advancing a little, we will enter a path that looks quite narrow, but it is just wide enough for the carriage to barely pass, so you can go ahead without stopping. Before he was called from the driver's seat, Otto contributed, showing them the way by own initiative. When they heard Otto point several paths hidden in nature, the bandits, who were a bit doubtful at first, finally comprehended the power of the divine protection of guidance, and started recognizing him as a protégé. Damn toe, this guy really turned out to be a great find. That coward finally did something useful. Maybe because calm surged up within his mind, one of the men spoke contentedly. Otto easily guessed who the word coward in that phrase was referring to. What was the cooperative relationship you all had with Ahim-san like? What? You wanna know about the guy who sold you? I'll tell you then. Seeing negative emotions in Otto's gaze, the man continued as he chuckled to himself. After we messed with that city a few times, the guy came to our hideout along with a woman. Then he said he could bring us women regularly in exchange for us not doing stuff in the city. So you accepted that offer? No, idiot. As if women were enough. We told him to send alcohol and food too. And that's how things with that guy started. Looks like we actually made his old man angry this time. To summarize, Ahim's dealings with the bandits were a choice made by him, and they were going fairly well until the problem with Morone. To have peace in exchange for the citizen's sensibility, that was basically it. That is all I wanted to know. When he showed his understanding through a nod, oh, yeah? The man ceased his boasting. Thanking him for that, Otto took a glance at the side, where Morone was. Morone's face, after lending an ear to the talk and finding out the truth behind the town she had grown in, looked pale. Now she knew the truth, but that was not necessarily comforting. Furthermore, the emotion called comfort only meant something for those who remained after the tragedy. For Otto and Morone, there was no future, but the condition for that ending to arrive was that things continued as they were currently. The bandits around Otto did not have any reaction in particular to the strange sound that came out of his lips. They had been informed that this was an absolutely necessary process for Otto to use the divine protection of guidance. It was a necessary ritual for Otto to get information from his divine protection. That was the lie that he had told them. Number 1. Immediately after the strange voice ceased, Otto spoke with human words. When she heard that call, Morone's shoulders went up. There was a promise they had previously made. This road was the designated place, and number 1 was the key word. GH. Clenching her teeth, Moroni grabbed the chain linked to her arm and clung to the wall. Her behavior surprised the bandits, but Otto strongly coiled the chain that linked him to the wall around his wrist, and before the bandits could grow suspicious of such behavior, "Laddie, don't you dare die, please." Right after the balanced mix of trust and recklessness that was his partner's voice, a violent impact rocked the carriage, knocking it over and throwing out, along with the men's screams, everything that was not secured inside the wagon. In that rift of the forest, all of them fell to the bottom of the valley, heads facing downwards.
Chapter 7.
How did we get saved in the end? In the treatment center's waiting room, Moroni wondered, a bandage around her head. Her confusion was justified. However, Otto, severely wounded, with bandages coiled around his head and neck, and one of his arms hanging from a sling, shrugged his unharmed shoulder. "Well, I think we do not need to worry about such trivial things. There wasn't any traveling knight making a gallant entrance, but we're alive, so not everything is bad. I don't know, number 2, I kinda get the feeling you're messing around. By chance, since we were linked to the wagon, we stayed there, but the people who weren't were unfortunately thrown out. And right next to a precipice, too. They definitely had no luck. I think I remember that. Everything was spinning, right? But, Seeing the incomprehension on Moroni's face, Otto donned a bitter smile. The two were at a treatment center located in the city in the mountain's foot, their place of destination. Like Otto declared, he had successfully guided them across the mountain. However, in that place, none of the people who supposedly accompanied him during the mountain crossing were present. The only one there was the woman who joined him midway, the senior slave Moroni, who was not a slave anymore. "Moroni-san, while you were receiving treatment, I went to do some small reports on my own. I reported that the bandits were using the tunnel, and also that Ahim was secretly collaborating with them. So, will they send the kingdom's army to Gineb? I do not think it will become a large-scale thing, but an official investigation will be done. Ahim will not be able to make any excuses, so he should get arrested, no doubt about it. As soon as the broken bridge was fixed, an investigation would begin in Gineb. It was possible for Ahim to flee before that if he used the steep mountain road, but he probably did not have the courage nor the willpower to do so. Although Ahim was the one directly responsible for the slave trading, the origin of his deviation had been the discord between him and Colin. The Lavrel house was in a desperate position in Gineb. Even if that was not the case, it was still the city that had allowed its own women to become sacrifices. A mere apology would never be enough to fix everything. By the way, Moroni-san, you also have the choice to join the investigation and return to Gineb. Yufufufu, hell no. Exactly what I thought. It was a fact that, whether Ahim was arrested or not many in the city would want to get involved with her. Not wanting any part in such a situation, Moroni firmly stretched her back as she stood up. "It's all right. I don't have any relatives, nor a family that'd get sad because of me not being there." This was an excellent chance. A new beginning. Now that optimism is too impressive coming from a person who almost got sold against her will by some insignificant men. I know, right? Number 2 and junior slave, you really should respect your senior a bit more. Yes, sure. Well, there is something I would like to gift my number 1 and senior. In response to the surprised Moroni's Otto showed the leather bag that he had been hiding behind his back. Taking it instantly, Moroni peeked into that heavy bag, and when she saw what was inside, she was rendered speechless. To tell the truth, it seems like there was a huge bounty on the bandits we were with. Their identities were discovered thanks to a few utensils that remained in the wagon. So, basically, even though it was an accident, we contributed to their annihilation. And this is the reward money from that. Oh, but considering the individual merits, it cannot be split in equal halves. I reserved the right to take a slightly bigger part. My carriage needs repairs, too, so I need enough money for that. Talking fast, Otto gave a justification for his injustice. Regardless of whether his words were true, the quantity that he gave Moroni sufficed. It was enough for a woman to find a new life. That was very terrible, the worst experience. but both you and I earned something. Do you see it, Morone-san? I was able to elude a deficit, and you, Morone-san, have completed your preparations for a new start. Furthermore, despite everything, we're alive. That's right, we're alive. We were saved. That alone should be enough, indeed, or, in economic terms, this is what I'd call a surplus. When he was joking with an eye closed, Otto's throat was blocked by surprise. The cause was the arms that surrounded his neck and back. In front of Otto, with her face red from an intense emotion, Morone surrounded him with her arms, and then she pulled Otto towards her plump body, embracing him. He felt a little disconcerted. But Otto immediately noticed that she was trembling. Please take very good care of yourself. I shall be praying for your prosperity in the future, Senior. Thank you, number 2. No, separating her face from him, Morone shook her head sideways, a few tears on her eyes. And then, she asked a question. What's your real name? To that question, Otto smiled, and answered. Just call me number 2, Senior.
Chapter 8.
With a piercing sound, the dragon carriage, which had been previously applied makeshift repairs, slowly advanced on the highway. Still, laddie, that was a terrible way to show off. Do not say it, please. I know that, and I am reflecting on it a lot too. From the driver's seat, Otto hung his head and sighed. The one who sighed too when she saw Otto was his partner, his land dragon, Frou-Frou, whose evident exasperation was visible on her usually inexpressive face. As always, Frou-Frou looked in a pitying way at his master, who had just gone through a series of misfortunes and calamities. What do you mean you got reward money? Every single one of those guys fell down the valley, and I'm pretty sure there's nothing that can reveal their identities. How do you even get a single coin from that? And as if that wasn't enough, you're fully aware your latest profits and your cargo have all gone down the drain, but somehow that doesn't stop you from giving half of the savings hidden under the wagon to some girl you probably won't see again. Laddie, are you an idiot? I do not believe I am an idiot, but... Am I an idiot? You're a huge idiot. While he conversed with the merciless Frou-Frou using his divine protection of soul of language, Otto looked up at the sky. A big part of the story he had told Morone at the treatment center was an invention of his. Of course, it was true that an investigation about the bandits and Ahim's case was going to be made in Guinea, but that one part about his profits and the reward money was a bunch of lies. All the profits he had made in Guinea had fallen down the valley along with his cargo and the bandits, and their recovery had been impossible. He had not lost the savings he used to hide under the wagon's floor out of stinginess, but he had gifted a good part of it to Morone, so he was not that far from going bust. What? Wouldn't I have nightmares if I forsook a person who has done nothing wrong? Laddie, that's exactly what you said when we got involved in this. He had said that, indeed. That he would have nightmares was what he said as he got dragged into embroils, and that he would have nightmares was also what he said as he suffered great losses at the last moment. Consistent from the very beginning to the very end, it was due to this tendency that Otto kept suffering losses. From the moment he had exposed the Lavrel house's defects, it was guaranteed that his business would no longer receive any special treatment in Guinea. This time, Otto had certainly done nothing more than letting his time, business opportunities, and profits go to waste. Could it be that my only profit was being thanked by Morone-san for helping her? Ha ha ha, laddie. Being satisfied with that sound so nightly, you are joking. Don't you see that I am a pure merchant from head to toe? With unpleasantness showing on his face, Otto directly denied Frou-Frou's remark. Otto did not comprehend those creatures known as knights at all. Nor would he ever be able to. I feel like meeting one would be problematic. Plus, I do not feel like associating with them, either. Ah, you said it. Now we know soon you're going to get involved with a knight or something and have a very bad time. Could you stop making my future out to be so dark? His partner's unpleasant prediction made Otto's voice crack. He was not joking. Otto wanted to be successful as a pure merchant. And for that reason, he wanted to avoid trouble as much as possible. Isn't there some place where we can find a strategy to make huge profits, with guaranteed safety and no risk factors? Aware that such a thing was not only a Nyric, but straight-up fantasy, Otto said it. Hearing that, Frou-Frou expressed her tiredness by lowering her head. Laddie, as long as you're you, something that wonderful won't happen. But I think you're fine just the way you are, Laddie. What does that mean? After all, in any case, Laddie, when you get your own store, you won't have a reason to travel anymore, and you won't have a job either. Please realize your dream as calmly as you can, Laddie. What does that even mean? Higher and higher, his cry kept on echoing until it reached the sky. Hearing that, Otto's beloved dragon's thick throat vibrated with a grandiose laugh. With that laugh, she said, "Well then, let's keep trying to make your dream come true until the end of time, Laddie."